Velsura. That time I got sent back in time as a slime, by Lobotomiskii. Special Chapter. Christmas in the Empire of Monsters. Mini Chapter 12.1. Sanders Cross. It is custom in the Jura Tempest Empire to have a national broadcast every morning. Usually, the broadcast is filled with less than exciting news, announcements of new projects, new food dishes, and the occasional anime convention, but today is different. The central plaza of Rimuru City, just earlier an empty space, now a large crowd gathers before a stage in anticipation. All eyes are on one tall, blonde-haired man strutting slowly up the stairs of the stage. The only sound apart from his heavy footsteps is the howling of the wind. The man, the Emperor Rimuru Tempest, also known to a few as the storm dragon Veldora, ended his stride a foot before the edge of the platform. The crowd is on their toes, dying to hear what their beloved leader has to say. What words of wisdom or oracles of impending calamity will he announce today? Eventually, after a long, suspenseful silence. Hua ha ha ha. The Emperor begins his speech, as usual, with an iconic three-piece laugh. Of course. It's that time of year. Christmas is here, my dear subordinates. And without saying another word, he flashes a grin, and walks away, leaving behind a baffled crowd. 20 minutes later, Veldora is seen relaxing in his office, reading a book. In the room with him are a red-haired ogre named Rimuru, a goblin named Rigard, and a human girl named Shizu Izawa. The silence that hangs in the air is occasionally interrupted by chuckle from Veldora, usually followed by an exasperated sigh from Shizu. Eventually, Rimuru decides to break the silence. Let me start by saying that was an excellent speech, Lord Rimuru. He maintains his dignified posture and polite tone of voice despite the awkward atmosphere. However, I don't think I understand what exactly a Chrissy Moss is. Rimuru lowers his head apologetically, and Rigard follows suit. Kua ha ha ha. You see, my dear subordinate, Christmas is a wonderful celebration. It is a festival revolving around a colorfully decorated tree, with lots of food, drinks, and scantily dressed elves. For whatever reason, Gobta, who was eavesdropping from outside, turns red and makes a wicked expression. At least, that's how Rimuru always celebrates Christmas on the 95th floor. Excuse me. What? Shizu almost drops her teacup. That's not how I remember it at all. Veldora looks taken aback. Obviously, he's quite confident in his own experience, but that's exactly how I celebrated it. Well. Maybe it was different from wherever you came from. From what my students have told me, Christmas is a time to celebrate with family, and eat lots of delicious fried food. Also there was something about an old man with a white beard, dressed in red. Ah. You mean Thundercross, right, Ito? No, Shizu pondered, trying to remember what her two students, Hinata and Yuki, taught her about how Christmas was celebrated in Japan. Was it San-no, Center? No, I think it was Sano. I remember. That's right, his name is Colonel Sanders. Neither of them were right, but unfortunately, there was no one to correct them. That year, a bearded old man dressed in red delivered fried chicken cutlets to all the children of Tempest. Mini Chapter 12.2. Santa Shizu. Deep within the Jura Forest, there exists a hell beyond compare. Young men and women are abducted from the streets against their will, and taken there to satisfy the desires of the devil who dwells inside that insidious place, and even the great deity who guards the forest is powerless against her. That place is called Shuna's Workshop. No. Shuna-san. Shizu's screams are heard throughout the city of monsters. Giggles come on, Lady Shizu. This costume looks great on you. Don't you try to leave before I'm done. Shuna grabs the fleeing girl firmly, sealing her fate. Rimuru-san. Help me. Shizu begs, but her cries are unanswered. Alas, the cold stare of Shuna had resurfaced certain memories inside of Veldora. Those sea cold eyes. Freezing sea cold eyes. Cold eyes. Cold eyes. Cold ice. All right now, Lady Shizu. It's done. Shizu breathed a sigh of relief as Shuna finally backed off. Come take a look at it in the mirror. Shuna excitedly exclaimed. I took only one glance for Shizu to die inside. This outfit. It's so short that I can see my panties. Please don't look, Rimuru-san. Luckily for her, Rimuru, Veldora, is still crying in a corner. Well, I guess I'll just change out of it later. Sigh. Oh, and, by the way, I've been trying a new enchantment lately that makes it impossible for your clothes to fall off. Well, of course that means you also can't take them off. Hearing this, Shizu was utterly crushed. Why, you devil? Shizu rushed out of the workshop, still covering her parts. Shuna's cold smile never left her face as Shizu hurriedly rushed out of the workshop. Fufu. Excellent work, Shuna. From the shadows, a round-nosed fiend appeared. I never knew that Rimuru-sama had such exquisite taste, as expected of our emperor. Indeed, Gobta-kun. I think this will be a great success. I already have many of them prepared. Fufufu. And so, the two evil, scheming demons laughed through the night. 1 hour later, despite the general state of confusion among the citizens of Tempest, the Christmas festival was launched without a hitch. The happy, excited atmosphere extends to every alley of the city of Rimuru, especially among the men. Boys. Tonight, and only tonight, feast your eyes on this delectable sight. A short, round-nosed hobgoblin stretched his arms out, and leaned back his head. Ah, truly, this is heaven. The goblin riders were originally uneasy, but they came to accept that their captain really was just amazing as he is. The goblins turned around to find a purple-haired Kijin standing uncomfortably behind them. These clothes are too tight. Can you guys help me loosen the strap? Shion pleaded to the goblin crew, but they were already knocked out from blood loss. The sight was too much, even for experienced perverts like them. Meanwhile, with Veldora. Veldora never understood the appeal of women. Despite his playboy appearance, he seemed to lack any romantic or sexual drive. Rimuru-sama. Are you sure that this is appropriate? Benimaru was concerned for the safety of the women in Tempest, as expected of the reliable Minister of Defense. To think that this is considered tradition in your hometown. Go ho. Benimaru dono. Gabiru slung his arm around Benimaru's shoulder. It's at times like the shizat you show, just sit back and enjoy the view. It's at times like these that you should just sit back and enjoy the view. Gabiru's slurred speech indicated that he was already extremely drunk. Vesta shook his head at his assistant's behavior, before silently and respectfully admiring the view. While the men were having this conversation, Veldora sat alone. He couldn't understand what there was to admire about women. Of course, there were traits to be admired, like strength and intelligence, but he couldn't find himself attracted to the more sensual aspects of women. Rimuru. Veldora looked behind to see Shizu peeking from behind a corner. Can I please borrow your cloak? This outfit is really embarrassing. No problem. He stood up and walked towards Shizu while taking off his cloak. His hand was outstretched, about to hand the cloak to Shizu, but he suddenly stopped. Ba dump? Rimuru-san? Shizu asked. It's nothing. Veldora scratched the back of his head as he handed the cloak to Shizu. I think I understand this feeling a bit more now. Mini Chapter 12.3. The aftermath. In the shadowy alleys of the monster capital, two devils lurk, discuss vile and treacherous things. Fufu. This was certainly a most successful endeavor, don't you think so, Shuna? Indeed, Gobta-kun. I certainly enjoyed tailoring all of those outfits, especially using Lady Shizu as a dressing doll. Fufu. Then we have a mutual interest. Shall we allow this alliance to prosper into the future? Indeed, it was pleasure doing business with you. Likewise. Fufu. The two motioned to shake hands, but were interrupted. Ho ho ho. If it isn't the princess and the disciple. A sinister voice appears behind the duo. Hakuro-san. Shuna turned around slowly, fear oozing out of her pores. Master. Gobta was no different. Hakuro. Master? Ho ho ho. No, I am Sandercross, and I have just seen two of the naughtiest children this year. The white-haired old man's eyes glowed an evil crimson. A black aura enveloped the fluffy red outfit he wore. Remember, Sandercross doesn't pack around. Chapter 13 Tempest vs. Orcs. Third Pav. The earth rumbles and trees topple as the flood of flesh and metal carve their way through the heart of the Jura forest. Their target, the Jura Tempest Empire, and their emperor, Rimuru Tempest. At the helm of the stampede is an orc that distinguishes itself from the rest, in size, appearance, and certainly in strength. He is the Orc Disaster Geld, an S-rank demon lord seed. Every step he walks shakes the ground, yet they are filled with a certain hesitation. However, there is no doubt that a fire of determination is lit within the eyes of the Orc Disaster. He knows his purpose, and on his honor, and the honor of his lord, Demon Lord Clayman, he shall complete his task, even if it costs him his life. Veldora Pav. Kua ha ha ha, very good, it seems my forces are building up well. I stand alone in the shade of a tree, overlooking the training grounds. Down below, a small army of monsters are engaging in sparring matches, practicing their skills for the upcoming battle. Of course, this is the task force built up to fight the Orc Lord, and the future elites of the Tempest Imperial forces. Out of the monsters below, I'm particularly focused on one pair. Huff Arg. How are you so strong? The rabbit girl named Flamare yells in frustration at Benimaru, who had just deflected her flurry of attacks with what looked like relative ease. I think I should be asking you that question. I'm quite impressed that you were able to keep up with me, the strongest Kijin in the Ogre clan, in a duel. Obviously, it doesn't need to be stated that Benimaru is a very capable fighter. I have, in fact, particularly enjoyed some of my spars with him. I would even say that he is on equal footing with my student, Zijin. However, in this case, I am more interested in the girl, Flamare. I knew her more as a person to have fun around Tempest with than a fighter, but it seems she is also quite capable in combat. Clang. Flamare's boomerang strikes at a weak point on Benimaru's katana. However, due to Flamare's lack of strength, the sword was only cracked, whereas a stronger strike would have snapped the sword in half. Benimaru, taking advantage of Flamare's surprise, swings his katana towards Flamare's neck, stopping before the blade cuts her head off. Arg. I just can't escape the fact that I'm weak, huh? Flamare crumples to the ground in defeat. You may be weak, but your fighting instincts are sharp. If you were only slightly stronger, then my sword would have been destroyed. Benimaru, although concerned at the state of his sword, praises Flamare. She certainly does have potential. Alright, it's settled then. Kua ha ha ha. I leap high into the air, and land in the center of the training field. Everyone stops sparring and turns to look at me. That was quite an exciting fight there, you two. Rimuru-sama. Both Benimaru and Flamare stutter in surprise, not expecting me to suddenly address them, much less praise them. Benimaru, you are incredibly strong, and Flamare, your fighting style and use of your unique skill is impeccable. I note. Both of them beam at my praise. Therefore, I shall be taking you both in as students. It's been a while since I've played sensei, and I'm itching to teach some people. Kua ha ha ha. Rimuru-sama. Am I hearing this right? Flamare looks taken aback. Am I really worthy of being your student? She almost crawls up to me. Kua ha ha ha, of course. I simply reply with my classic response for these situations. Yahoo! Flamare leaps into the air with excitement. Contrarily, Benimaru has just been standing there the whole time with a calm smile of his face, watching Flamare's antics. After they die down, he speaks. I am honored that you would consider me worthy for your tutelage. However, I must respectfully decline, as I wish to return to the Ogre village after the war ends. Hia! How could you reject a personal offer of tutelage from the great storm dragon himself? Sigh. Well, it's to be expected from Benimaru. He never stops acting like a cool samurai general. How boring. Flamare still seems really excited, as she should be when the great Veldora offers to teach her. Learn from her, Benimaru. After that, I returned to the tree I was standing under, and continued observing my elite Imperial troops train. The next day. My forces in Tempest are now lined up in preparation for the orcs' attack. Some are nervous, while others are riled up. In the distance, a huge dust cloud is seen, no doubt the approaching orc army. Indeed, the battle will happen today. Benimaru, the temporarily appointed Minister of Defense, walks up onto a stage facing the line of warriors. Everyone! Benimaru's voice booms across the field, reaching every warrior standing in the line. I will now brief you all on the battle plan. Benimaru then went on to explain the final battle plan that was drawn the previous night. The first stage included having the long-range fighters fire wide-range spells like Benimaru's Hell Flare, to whittle down the numbers of the attacking orcs, as well as carve a path through the orc forces. The second stage included having our fast-moving forces, the goblin riders, surround the orcs, preventing them from going around the defenses and attacking the city from the side. Meanwhile, the dragonutes will use their fire breath to further clear a path in the orc army, straight towards the orc lord. The third stage was the main battle, where the main battle force, including all of the close-range fighters, would directly engage in combat with the orcs. Once we reach the orc lord, my forces will secure a perimeter for me to safely fight the orc lord alone, so that I may showcase my glamorous fighting techniques, as well as my strength. After the orc lord is defeated, we will tell the orcs to surrender, concluding the battle. Most importantly, we want as few orc casualties as possible, just enough that we are guaranteed a victory. The orcs were integral in building Tempest in the original timeline, and they will no doubt be in this one. Of course, the only one in the strategy meeting with such foresight was me. Kua ha ha ha, as expected of me. I command you to stop that, great sage. Returning to the present, Benimaru had wrapped up his speech with something reminiscent of motivational finisher from classic shonen scriptures. I applaud your wisdom, Benimaru. As expected of something taken from the wisdom of the sacred texts, the warriors cheer excitedly once Benimaru's speech ends. With that, the Tempest forces take up positions in wait for the enemy to arrive. An hour later. 3, 2, 1. The orc army has now arrived within range of our long-range magical attacks. As according to the battle plan, Benimaru commands the long-range fighters to prepare to attack. Fire. Around a dozen hell flares, as well as a mix of various other magic attacks, are lobbed at the encroaching army. Each shot lands relatively close to the designated coordinates, and once the dust clears, there is an almost completely empty path towards the heart of the army. Prepare to fire again. Not skipping a beat, Benimaru prepares the warriors for a second round. Fire. This time, however, the results are not nearly as good as last time. The hell flares detonate upon contact of an invisible barrier, engulfing most of the other magical attacks in flames. What? Benimaru snarls in surprise and anger. Why do the orcs suddenly have a barrier? Benimaru. I interjected, seeing as it was a perfect time to dispense my great sage's wisdom. The orcs had a barrier set up this entire time, but it was too weak to stop any of your attacks. It seems that the barrier was strengthened after they realized they were within enemy attacking range. Arg. Benimaru takes a few deep breaths and calms down. Very well, we shall begin phase 2 and 3. The dragonutes, on cue, take off towards the orc army. Meanwhile, the ground forces start making their way into the gap in the orcs' numbers. The goblin riders, Tempest's domestic, and most numerous force, holds off the orcs of the sides while the main forces continue to brawl their way into the center of the horde. Ahead of us, we see pillars of flame erupt from the sky, scorching the unfortunate orcs on the ground. The terrifying wrath of the dragonutes. After over 20 minutes of continuous fighting, the main fighting force has made their way to the orc lord. Immediately, 6 A-ranked orc generals pounce on us with great speed, despite their huge bodies. However, the Tempest Imperial forces already boast several Calamity-class fighters, so these mere orcs cannot even dent them. Ho ho. So you must be, Rimuru Tempest, a deep, sonorous voice rumbles. I am Geld, the orc disaster, and I shall be the one to destroy you. I leap ahead into the clearing where the orc lord is standing, and with a confident grin, I reply. Kua ha ha ha. Indeed, I am Rimuru Tempest. It shall be you who will be destroyed today, orc lord.